welcome. It is episode 9 of the Endurance Eat series. I can't believe we're already 9 episodes in, but if you are an endurance athlete, a runner, triathlete, cyclist, this video series is for you, as my dietitian team and I are taking your nutrition and fueling questions and discussing them in depth. And if you haven't met me yet, I'm Alex of Alex Larson Nutrition, and I have with me my dietitian team members, Hannah Cooley and Mary Wirtz. We work one-on-one with endurance athletes from around the world, in addition to being athletes ourselves. Now, if you are new to this video series, please don't forget to tap that subscribe button below. You'll get alerts for future episodes as they get released. And if you have your own questions that you would love for us to discuss here, head to the comments and ask. We'll add that to our queue. So today we are going to get right into this. I have a question that came in that I'm a plant-based distance cyclist, almost vegan. I still do a little bit of fish and eggs. How can I make sure that my diet is meeting my needs as an athlete? So Mary, I'm going to have you start out this one for us because I know that you really love working with our plant-based athletes. You like that added challenge. So what are some of the top considerations that plant-based endurance athletes should be looking at with their nutrition?
Oh, I love this. Okay, let's just go back. And I need to commend our plant-based athletes first and foremost because I feel like they just have the best souls on this earth. Honestly, they're always just the sweetest people with the best intentions, and we just have the funnest time together. So that's completely unrelated from nutrition, of course, but we absolutely love and commend our plant-based athletes. But I would say it does add that extra level of challenge in fueling yourself, not just as an individual, but obviously as an endurance athlete. So first and foremost, working with most of our clients, particularly our plant-based athletes, it can be really difficult to know where you're going if you don't know where you're starting from. So when I start with my plant-based athletes, I absolutely have them log their nutrition for several days just to get a better idea of what does your typical day look like. Are you optimizing protein intake throughout the day? Are you getting in enough eating occurrences throughout the day? Are you optimizing post-workout nutrition, particularly on harder effort days, longer days, double days? Are they meeting their micronutrient needs, which can be very demanding, of course, as a plant-based athlete, but I would say working with these athletes, by and large, very few of them enter the program meeting their protein needs. And that's because it's obviously just more challenging when you're removing animal-based sources, which are such high quality, good protein sources from your diet. So typically for our athletes, we're recommending 1.7 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And when you think about plant-based protein sources, that can be really difficult to get in unless if you're having a really good high quality protein source with almost every meal or eating occurrence. So foods to include tofu, tempeh, seitan. I always joke with that one, not to be confused with Satan. Nobody else thinks I'm funny, but I totally do. Beans, lentils to a lesser extent, absolutely include a high quality plant-based protein powder. I will say it's almost impossible to meet your protein needs as a plant-based endurance athlete without regularly including a plant-based protein powder in there. And then certainly milk alternatives are great as well. If you're thinking of a higher protein milk alternative, I would probably gear more towards like a soy protein or a soy milk or a pea protein milk for those options. And then a few other vitamins and minerals that are just more challenging for plant-based athletes are going to be calcium, because a lot of the calcium-rich food sources are certainly dairy. So making sure that you're regularly including leafy greens, beans, lentils, and of course, calcium-fortified food products. I really love the idea of doing plant-based milk alternatives that are well fortified with calcium and also vitamin D for my plant-based athletes, because otherwise it gets really tricky to meet calcium needs day in and day out. Iron can be a challenge because plant-based iron food sources are less absorbed by the body than animal-based. So making sure that you're getting in a wide variety of good fortified foods, fortified breakfast cereals, cream of wheat, cream of rice, grape nuts, Wheaties, beans, lentils, all of those are going to be very, very good from an iron perspective. So those are a few considerations. What about you ladies? What are some specific challenges that you've had with?
I think I would first, because I'm always the first touch point with any of our athletes that come into the program. And so when they say that they're plant-based, I'm like, okay, hey, what does that mean? Because there's kind of a wide spectrum. I think when someone says they're plant-based, they might assume that means that they're vegan, but that's not always the case. So vegan is 100% no animal-based products, including honey. But with plant-based, it's actually a pretty much a wide variety of, that spectrum. So they could be someone like this particular question was, they do a little bit of fish and eggs. They could be, so that's pescatarian and ovo. But they also could do some dairy as well. I think that when an athlete comes in and says they're plant-based, but they still do eggs and dairy, I think that really does open up a lot of options for them to meet their nutrition and protein needs a lot easier. Whereas with a vegan, you really have to be very intentional day in and day out. You're going to need to do some supplements to meet those needs, especially I'd say with B12, likely an iron, and like you said, a protein powder as well, plant-based protein powder, because it's just the volume of food that you need to eat in order to meet those needs is almost like, it's just really, really challenging because that plant-based food is so bulky. It's just really difficult. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm fairly certain I saw a study, and I'd have to pull it up, but they were looking at plant-based protein foods, and they found that because those foods were so fibrous, that the body didn't really fully break down those foods, and we weren't actually absorbing all of the protein from it. And so you might need to eat an additional like 20-25% more protein, plant-based protein foods in order to actually hit your protein numbers.
Yeah, I certainly believe that too, just with the bioavailability as well, knowing that soy is one of the highest, and for many reasons or another, soy is tending to get a bad reputation just with a lot of negative marketing against soy. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that for sure.
Yeah, I always tell my athletes too, it's not only what you're eating, it's what you're digesting and absorbing. And there's so much that can play into that, like age, stress, how much you're drinking or hydrating during meals, that can all affect digestion of food as well. So in that case, and I think every athlete that's stressing their body, like our athletes do, I do recommend lab testing. I think it's extremely important, not only to be like optimize your athletic potential, but to make sure that you're feeling good in your everyday as well. There are a lot of different options that we could run through, and that's maybe saved for another episode. But I think regular lab testing, and especially for our plant-based athletes, because like you said, like obviously we love our plant-based athletes, but there is some extra attention and care that we have to look at, like all of the amino acids, zinc, iron that you mentioned, B12. I mean, there's like an exhaustible list that you just wouldn't be getting through animal protein that we'd want to make sure that we're optimizing through possible supplementation.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say there's two populations as a sports dietitian that if I could just capture all of them and work with all of them, I would say it's our pregnant endurance athletes, but also our plant-based endurance athletes, because again, it can be very difficult to know where you're going, and it can be very difficult to know where you're starting unless if you're a sports dietitian and obviously specialize with a lot of these nuances when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah, and I think also I probably should have like led with this, but We're pretty respectful of our athletes coming in and how, like, if they choose to eat plant-based, we respect that.
Yeah.
If you choose to eat meat, it'd be more of an omnivore in that sense. We respect that. You know, we're open to any and all of that. If you come in and you eat gluten-free or dairy-free, we're very respectful of allergies as well. We're not going to tell someone like you have to eat meat in order to be
Right.
healthier. We're willing to work with what our athletes are coming in and requesting. I think the only time that I have turned people away is when they say they eat keto or they believe in intermittent fasting, and I'm like, yeah, that just doesn't align with our philosophy with fueling endurance athletes. So just
Yeah.
something for people to say like, oh, do I have to eat plant-based in order to work with you guys? No, absolutely not. We're open to all of that and respectful, because I think that is one of the beautiful things about, for us, that you get that choice. Some people, where they live, it might be limited in terms of food availability, and they might have to not. They might have to be a little more open-minded with food choices. So, just wanted to add that little disclaimer at the end. So, all right, let's move on to our next question here. So, this is a female runner, a 31-year-old ultra runner, and they have been struggling with their menstrual cycle. She says, I don't get my period every month. Sometimes I'll go a few months without it. Any tips for regulating my cycle with nutrition? And Hannah, I will have you lead this one off for us.
Yeah, another topic that we absolutely love. I'll be pulling in Alex and Mary to share their insight on this one as well. But when it comes to getting your menstrual cycle, this is the hallmarker for health for females. Like if we have an athlete that comes to us that is not getting their cycle, that is the very first thing that we're going to address, because it's going to affect every other aspect of their life, regardless of whether or not they hope to be a parent. Getting your regular menstrual cycle is going to ensure that your bones are healthy and strong, you stay injury free, you recover a little bit better. And when we're not getting that menstrual cycle, there's several different things that we want to look at as to why it's not happening. Just as like a little aside, it's interesting that I think even Lauren Fleshman has brought this up in some of her marketing or some of her writing that she's done. Um, in the professional sports world and even in college, I experienced this well as an athlete. It was almost like a badge of honor if you weren't having it, because it almost made you feel like you were training as hard as you possibly could, when that is so backwards. You are going to be a better athlete if you are cycling regularly. So a few things that we'd want to address. First and foremost, we'd want to address caloric levels, just to ensure that you are taking in enough for the activity that you're doing. So it seems to be, this doesn't apply to every athlete, but caloric intake is more predictive of regular menstrual cycle than even body weight. Now, those do align, of course, they are going to coincide. But if an athlete is fueling properly, and we'll talk a little bit about specific macros are comprising that caloric intake in a little bit, but that is more predictive of somebody getting their menstrual cycle rather than just their body weight. So first and foremost, working one-on-one with a dietitian to ensure that you're getting enough. But there are several things that can impact how much you need, like stress levels would be the second thing that we'd have to look at. So regardless of training level, what's the intensity like? Are you maybe running too much of your mileage like too fast and there's not enough recovery? Are you maybe not sleeping well? Or are there other sources of stress like dehydration, food sensitivities, all of that could possibly play into the fact that either you're not meeting your energy needs, or maybe you're just not absorbing what you should be taking in. A few other things that I would look at, so I mentioned caloric levels, stress levels. I would also look at health, like bringing in more healthy fats and ensuring that you're eating enough fat in general. So caloric levels for sure, but fats would be second. So when we're eating really low fat for a very long time, we will get a hormone change. Hormones are built from fat in the body. We need to eat fat to support our hormones, and if we eat too little fat for too long, there will be a lowering effect of our hormones in the blood. So we want to make sure that we're addressing that. And then last thing, kind of like top tier that I would definitely look at would be specific micronutrients. So first and foremost, bone building nutrients like calcium and vitamin D certainly would want to address that either through supplementation or diet, just depending on if that person's plant-based or not. I would also look at omega-3s just to bring down that inflammation if that's a potential cause. And then we'd also want to look at like just kind of supporting like the basis of micronutrients in general. So maybe bringing in like a multivitamin, just depending on the diversity of somebody's diet and how broad of a range they're taking in different fruits and vegetables. We will be having a article, Alex, I think it comes out in September, on this on our
early
website.
September. It'll be titled Amenorrhea, How to Get Your Period Back as an Athlete. So that, and then we do have also, it's already published. It's been up for a while, all about REDS. So it used to be Red S. They had a hyphen in there. Now I heard that they removed the hyphen. It was also formerly known as Female Athlete Triad, but we see REDS in both men and women. And so they wanted to make it a little more gender inclusive. So I think that's something to be very aware of, is the signs and symptoms of REDS, that disordered eating, extreme weight loss methods, restrictive dieting. There's some classic signs and symptoms that can put you at risk for seeing that deregulation in hormones and losing your period. I mean, actually, missed periods is one of the signs and symptoms of REDS. So if you're seeing hair loss, brain fog, cold hands, really chronic fatigue, you're constantly sick, if you're seeing some significant weight loss, dehydration, like all of those are going to be signs and symptoms of REDS and can lead to having that dysmenorrhea or amenorrhea. So definitely being informed about this, I think, can be really helpful. And then if you're someone that's already in that kind of missed periods or a regular period stage, like reach out to a sports dietitian, whether it's our team or someone else, because it's really important to get back on your cycle on a regular basis, so that because like Hannah said, it is the number one sign that that female athlete is healthy. So we do have resources as well on the ALN blog, but hands down, working one-on-one with the dietitian will be really important as well.
Yeah, and I just want to mention too, to Hannah's point, is I feel like culturally we've made a significant amount of progress in women's sports and appropriate fueling, improved fueling all across the board. But working with a lot of athletes that have struggled with dysmenorrhea or amenorrhea, many medical providers kind of write these symptoms off altogether. And it's common, but it's not normal. It is not healthy to be struggling long-term with dysmenorrhea or amenorrhea. And clinically, the gold standard too is to have a DEXA scan and hormonal testing if you have not had a period in 6 months or more. And most providers aren't up to that. So it's, by and large, it's absolutely imperative to advocate for yourself as a patient. Find yourself a provider that will listen to you. If you're experiencing a lot of those red S symptoms, but you have an irregular period because you're on hormonal birth control or an IUD, which can obviously affect the consistency of your menstrual cycle, again, find yourself a provider that will listen to you and take your symptoms seriously, and also absolutely find yourself a dietitian who is well equipped to work with you as an athlete. So very important.
Yeah, I think too, if you're going to your OBGYN and saying my periods are irregular and their solution is going on birth control, I would say I would wait and I would address the main reason of why that. If you're an endurance athlete and you are someone that is not 100% positive that you're fueling enough, if you're really in heavy training and that period is not consistent, I would first address the nutrition piece before you're going on birth control.
Absolutely.
Personally, like that's
totally
just
agree.
my thought
Totally
on
agree.
that, of like, you really have to kind of advocate for yourself and like, no, I need to address this. Like, can you do you have a sports dietitian that you can refer to, or should I find my own? Like this is something I need to address because,
Mhm.
as you mentioned, that bone health is, I mean, that's where you see major stress fractures. And also to your point of like, we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go when it
Absolutely.
comes to the culture of endurance sports, the culture of women's endurance sports. Um, there's still coaches out there and cross country team universities across the country that are reporting toxic cultures in terms of unhealthy body weight and dieting. And we just need to continue spreading the word that this is not okay. And
Yeah.
we need to first and foremost make sure that these women are healthy and staying strong and not damaging their bodies long term.
Absolutely. If I could get a
Right.
ferritin and get a DEXA scan for every athlete just to ultimately have more knowledge and more objective evidence that, like you're in a very good, healthy spot, I would love it. I would love it. That would be a huge goal, but I agree. We have a ton of work to do, but we're up for the challenge. So that's a
Yeah,
good thing.
it's definitely we're on the right trend. I feel like
Hmm.
just in the discussions on social media about body inclusivity in sports and um, kind of fighting back against diet culture. You know, I'm all about that on social media. So I think we're definitely heading in the right direction, which is good. All right, let's move on to our last question here. This came in from a cyclist, or actually a triathlete. So, for my long rides, I sometimes forget to eat and drink every 30 minutes. Any strategies to remember during events and when time loses all meaning? So, I'm going to lead this one off. In triathlon, and Hannah, you might be able to like agree with me. There's a lot going on, especially during the bike, and especially on a technical course. And you're so focused on so many different things and there's a lot of distractions going on, like it can happen where you kind of forget. I could see that happening. So there's a couple things that I do personally. One is with the sports watch. I think it's really important to set up alerts on them. I have my runners do this, I have my triathletes do this, where for me, I have mine set for every 15 minutes because I might alternate between like, I'll drink every time it alerts, but I'll also like fuel maybe every 30 minutes. It's just a reminder for people of like where they're at in terms of like time increments, because sometimes you do just get in the zone. You get into that like that groove and you're just focused on maintaining your pace, maintaining your power, and you can forget. So having a sports watch just kind of alert you to keep you on track with that, I think is really important. I have a Coros, but Garmin I know does that as well. And then the other secondary thing that I think is really, really important is being very intentional with your fueling and hydration throughout your training. Setting goals for how much you're going to eat and drink every hour, doing that day in and day out with your training, it becomes very much second nature to be on time with that, so that when you get to the race and there's so many distractions and things going on that you're focusing on, that the nutrition and hydration part is just kind of an automatic thing for you, and it's not something that you're having to worry too much about remembering because you've just been doing it for months and months on end, that it really just it comes natural. So, and also like executing on like your B and C races. So if you have like an A race you're kind of training for, using those lower priority races to again just practice things and stay focused on executing that nutrition hydration plan, executing your paces and power. I think all of that can be really helpful on race day, to nailing your nutrition hydration. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think, obviously I work mostly with our runners. And so even for our marathoners that are gearing up for fall race, most of them are going to be planning to stop or grab water from every aid station. And most marathon races have those aid stations every 2 miles, oftentimes every 1 mile, like the last 6 miles or so. So for them, for, some individuals, it may be easier to think about it as aid stations versus necessarily as minutes. Okay, every other aid station, you're going to have a gel, and then the opposing aid stations, you're going to just have liquid nutrition. So, I mean, I guess time is a little less relevant then than just simply going by aid stations on the course.
Yeah, and if your aid stations are spread out farther apart, being aware of that, like studying your race course in advance.
Absolutely.
And having an idea of what your time is going to be between aid stations, especially if it's like a trail run or a triathlon or a cycling race, like what is that difference? Can be really helpful to just knowing, what do I need to take at that aid station or what do I need to take in between to get me through until I get to the next one.
And that can be a great mental boosting benefit too. I mean, all of our athletes, we're going to always recommend studying that aid station in advance, and also train. If you plan to take nutrition on course, you absolutely have to be training with what they are offering, whether you like it or not, or pack your own, which we can obviously help work with. But, where you may be going longer amounts of time, I would say between aid stops, sometimes that can be a little bit of a mental boost as well, with knowing, okay, at mile 17, they're going to be having the caffeinated energy gels, and I'm at mile 13, I'll do an uncaffeinated one then, but I have mile 17 to look forward to. So, I mean, yes, we do need to take into consideration, are you still meeting your carbohydrate, sodium, electrolyte, fluid goals every hour? But there are strategies where you don't necessarily need to focus on doing it every 15, 20 minutes and worrying so much about the clock, where for some of those longer races, that can just simply get far too daunting for some people.
Yeah.
I would also say, like, sometimes I tell this to my clients too, especially for my triathletes, like, I just tell them it only takes one epic bonk for you not to do it again. Like when you
talked about that,
right? Like you get to mile 80 on the bike. Let's say you've got like 20 miles left, and you just want to like curl up on the side of the road and sleep. Like everything shuts down. You will never not drink and hydrate again. That's happened to me. Like it happened to me early on, and I never once went back. So I'm just like, you let yourself go to a place where it's like impossible to come back from, and you won't let yourself do that. Another thing I say too is like, think of like the fueling and hydration as like little carrots to break it up. Like endurance athletes, we're out there for a long time. And I think it's more of like a game. Like it just breaks it up into like 15 or 10-minute segments rather than I have a 4-hour ride. It's like, no, you have 16 snacks. Like, it's like, just like thinking of it different.
Love it. I totally love it.
You have 16 snacks to look forward to, and not a 4-hour bike.
It's a fabulous quote. I love that though. I absolutely agree with incentivizing, especially for my trail runners, the crazy trail runners that are out there for 24 hours plus. You absolutely need those incentives to power you through those horribly ugly middle of the night zones, whether you're bribing yourself with caffeine or bribing yourself with your most favorite snack during those overnight hours. I mean, sometimes too, that those are good strategies for breaking it up throughout the race as well.
Yeah, I read somewhere, or maybe it was my husband that told me the other day, like Courtney Dowalter, like brushes her teeth at each aid station. Did you guys know that?
Yep.
It's more of like a mental, like, I think like it's like the spearmint, like just resets her.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, she's just amazing in every facet of life.
She really is.
I don't think I'll be brushing my teeth like at every aid station, but I mean, I think that, I could see, when you're out there for that long, at some point I'd be like, my teeth feel disgusting. I need to brush my teeth, but I don't know every single time.
Yeah. I wish that I would have been able to do that in Kona, because I think I had probably, 3 or 4 liters of Coke, and my teeth hurt for a week after. I wish I would have brushed.
Oh my gosh, that's so much Coke. Oh my,
so much.
All right. Okay. Well, that wraps up our 3 discussion points today. I'm really excited for episode 10. You guys stay tuned. It's gonna be our triathlon series video, because Hannah and I, we're gonna just geek out on all of our triathlon tips. So anyways, make sure that you are subscribed. Tap that subscribe button. We'd love to hear from you. Please leave comments, ask questions. We truly enjoy doing these recordings. They're really fun for us. So we'd love to hear you and get feedback on what else we can discuss and help you with. So thank you so much for listening, and until next time.